Hey Spartans, Josh here. Just wanted to give you a heads up coming into these episodes in the month of May. Just like last year, we're doing a full dedication to the month of May to what nationally they call Mental Health Awareness Month. We're trying to change it into Brain Health Awareness Month. That being said, these episodes will be sensitive in nature. I do want you to lean in though. Last year I asked you if you were in a dark spot, potentially not to listen or tune out. I'm actually going to ask the opposite this time, that you lean in. I am here for you. If you need to talk, please shoot me a DM. If you're struggling right now, if you're in a dark spot, I want you to know that I am here at any time. And these messages, these stories will help. They are going to give you seeds of hope this month. And for those of you doing well, I encourage you to donate this month, time or money or treasures of your choosing to this national crisis. That being said, enjoy these wonderful episodes with some amazing human beings that have truly inspiring stories. This was a choice you made over the last 12 months to get help, getting through this program to fix your own brain, essentially. Now you've been blessed with this divine gift of seeing the beauty in life.
It was a choice, but my body was physically shutting down on me, and I couldn't play with my daughter. I couldn't, When I walked into the clinic, the doctor looked at me and said, if you had had a stroke this morning walking into the office, I would have not been surprised. What I found is that as my mental clarity continued to diminish and brain fog became even worse, it also impacted my ability for my body to produce testosterone. My body wasn't processing things properly because my brain wasn't working properly. When I went to TBI treatment, the very first thing they did was they said, this is the diet you're going to be on while you're here. No more medication, no alcohol, no processed foods. That small change in a 10-day to 12-day period can create that much of an impact where I was able to go back home after this treatment for Christmas, walk in the door and toss my daughter over my head. Could you imagine if people would quit listening to all the that comes out from the mainstream sources of this is how you're supposed to live and actually understood that you could change? Could you imagine the difference our society would be in right now? All the bullshit they're feeding you is not true. You don't have to live this way. It doesn't have to be this way. It can change. There's a really great opportunity to spread the message to the community to help them understand that, hey man, there's hope.
This is Sparta!
Welcome back to Spartan Leadership. I'm your host, Josh Kosnick. Hey, and this is your reminder, long-term listeners, we got to share these episodes. We are spreading far and wide now over in Europe and Australia, which is awesome to see the impact, all of you sharing. If this is your first time here, we are doing some special episodes, and today's going to be no different. And if I bring someone back to the show, you know they're a pretty freaking awesome human being. And with that being today, I got founder of Savage Freedom's Defense, former Green Beret, 17-year veteran to our great country, and most importantly, father to the sweetest little girl. Welcome back, Adam Smith. How we doing, brother?
What's up, dude? Man, if I was doing any better, I wouldn't know what to do with myself.
That is awesome to hear. So the reason we're having this conversation today, you guys got to hear Adam a while back. Gosh, probably a year ago now.
Maybe a little bit longer, almost 18 months.
Crazy to think about that. It's been that long since we had you on the show. And so the reason we're doing this is obviously the month of May is very important to me with, they call it Mental Health Awareness Month, but as my friend Kevin Hines is trying to reposition those words to brain health, we're going to say brain health awareness. And Adam, over the last 12 months, we've stayed in touch and become friends. And Adam not only has a phenomenal story through his own military career, running just a great leader in and of himself, but put himself through the ringer to help get his brain right over the last 12 months. And I was following his story through his social media and him being very vulnerable to share his story. So let's start with some of the military career and where everything happened. So those that are just new listeners of Spartan and haven't listened to that previous episode, which I please, everyone, go back and listen to Adam's first time on the show, because him and I chopping it up was a great episode. But let's start with some of the military career, and then how this mental health piece, brain health piece, has kind of evolved for you over the last few years.
Man, so I knew at a young age I wanted to be in the military. And so I kind of strong-armed my parents at 17 and letting me sign up. I talked my dad into it, my mom into it. And, hindsight being 2020, I realize now more than ever before that the reason why my dad didn't want to sign me up was because now that I'm an older guy, like we're now parents, right? Josh, you and I, we're now adults. We now have children. I couldn't imagine signing my name on the dotted line for my daughter to go and volunteer to potentially lose her life for the country. And I get that now for my dad. And so at 17, I signed up and eventually made it. I did a deployment to Bosnia. We were one of the last rotations into Bosnia. And then I did a deployment to Afghanistan and came back. And then I went to selection and luckily made it, was awarded my Green Beret. And then I was a Green Beret for the rest of my time in my military career. Had an opportunity to work at the Defense Intelligence Agency and just really, really good opportunity to have a lot of experiences. And, experiences from everything from, you talk about mental health and brain health and physical health. I didn't realize the experience of doing, breaching operations where we're doing breaching charges on a door and standing 3 feet away from the door, or dropping flashbangs or 9-bangers into a room and having them going off while we're making entry. Shooting Carl Gustav rounds, dropping mortar rounds, having potential like we had IEDs go off next to us. I didn't realize that every one of those experiences of overpressure was a problem. Like I didn't know that every single time you got your bell rung, that was an issue for your brain. I just thought it was one of those things where if you didn't get concussed, then it's not a big deal. And so my military career over a span of roughly 17 years, not only was I in the military, but I also played rugby. I played football. I mean, I really beat the out of myself a lot as a kid and as an adult, and then add to all of that on top of it, add to the fact that, if you're doing airborne operations, every time you hit the ground, every single time you land, if you're over 225, 230 pounds, your PLF is not your parachute landing fall PLF, it's not going to save you. It's not going to rescue you. It hurts every single time. And every time you land, that's another time getting your bell rung. And so, this last year, like you were talking about, those last 12 months, I learned a lot about like injury exposure and blast exposure and overpressure exposure and what it really looks like to cause a head injury and the true and legitimate impact it has psychologically and physiologically on the system, because man, it jacked my world up. Last year was hard.
Yeah. So before we go into that a little bit further, we recently had Ben Utecht on the podcast, and Adam, you may not know him. He was possibly, because I know you're a football fan. He was tight end for the Indianapolis Colts, and ended his career with the Bengals. But he was with Peyton Manning for a number of years, and his career ended with his 5th concussion, and he had to go through a lot of therapy. I'm actually interested in your story to see if it was something similar, but he was talking about how he had essentially the brain of a child after that, and had to rework and do so many exercises to essentially get his life back through those headbangs, those traumas essentially. And what you're referencing with the flash grenades, with the landing from the plane, from all the different things, the mortars, all the things that you did, getting your bell rung, it's very, very similar in that analogy. Because in the NFL, I played at a collegiate level, and I know my friends that played in the NFL, like those are like car crashes every time they're getting hit. And so very similar for our military folk like you. So talk a little bit about because this was a choice you made over the last 12 months to get help, right?
It was, yeah, it was a choice. But the other piece too was that it had to happen, or Josh, it was going to, like, legitimately, I was going to die. Like physically, there was a point in my life when I was ready to end my life. Back in 2016, when I first got out of the Army, I didn't want to live anymore. I lost my tribe. I lost my identity. I lost my mission. I lost my purpose. I didn't know who I was or why I did what I did. I didn't know. And because of that, I did almost end my life. And I talk about that when I go and speak at nonprofit events or even at for-profit business conferences. When I go, my opening video is an opening video of me reading my suicide note. And so like that was a really hard time in my life. This last 12 months over last year, 2023, it was to the point where my body basically said, hey, dude, if you don't go and get this fixed, you will die. Like you're not going to, I couldn't walk, man. Like my body was physically shutting down on me and I couldn't play with my daughter. I couldn't, I couldn't get on the ground and wrestle with my daughter, and I couldn't pick her up and lift her over my head. And when I did get on the ground, I couldn't get off the ground without help. I'm here I am, big, strong, big, strong former Green Beret trying to play with this little girl and just physically incapable of doing it.
That's what I was going to say. While you gather yourself here, for those now watching Adam on video, dude's a beast. Like, and I know you've gotten yourself in better shape now. There's a period where you lose a little bit and you gain a little bit and whatever it may be. But dude's a big, strong dude, right? For those of you now watching on video, so for him to be vulnerable and talk about not being able to be on the ground and wrestle with his daughter, like that's obviously an emotional thing for you. And obviously it's something that as parents, that's part of I don't have any of the experience that you have from the military, but like as part of the reason I work out so dang hard is to be able to do anything I want for my kids. Yep. It's to be able to throw them over my shoulder, to be able to carry them to bed, whatever it may be, so that I'm there for them. And obviously to be a protector.
And she's, my little girl's a savage and she's an Energizer bunny, man. Like she's turning 3 and she just goes. She just goes. She just runs laps. And I've got to be able to keep up with this kid because, I'm not going to be, I never wanted to be an old dad. And I'm in my 40s and I have a 3-year-old daughter. And so if I'm going to keep up with her, my shit has to be wired tight and I've got to have my stuff together, both physically, spiritually, emotionally, and financially, or I can't be present. I can't be with her because my body hurts, or I can't be with her because I'm worried about where the next dollar is going to come from, or I can't be with her because I'm worried about, whether or not I'm doing the right thing for the right reasons with the right people. And so there's this, that last year was, it was a rude awakening in a lot of ways because, When I walked into the clinic in December, the doctor looked at me and said, if you had a stroke this morning walking into the office, I would have not been surprised.
Wow.
That's how bad it was. And
was that from brain scans that they did or what
no,
type
So what I found was that I have an autoimmune issue. I have nummular eczema. Okay. And I was diagnosed with it before I joined the Army at 17. But I've always been able to control nummular eczema with nutrition. I didn't really have to use medication. Well, what I found is that as my mental clarity continued to diminish and brain fog became even worse, it also impacted my ability for my body to produce testosterone. So this is the thing. Your brain, obviously, it controls every aspect and every mechanism of your body. And your neurological health has a definitive impact on your physiological health because one begets the other begets the one. You can have the most powerful mind in the world and a frail body, but you still have strength of will. But if you have a frail body and a frail mind, then you have nothing. You will diminish to nothing eventually, and it'll happen rather quickly. And so my mind continued to weaken to the point where I found myself in this dark hole. I couldn't get out of this dark hole and I couldn't understand why. Look, I've done so much work, Josh, and I know you have too, man, like personal development, spiritual development, studying, meditation, yoga, journaling, prayer, getting closer and more connected spiritually. Like all of these things play a major role in psychological health and physiological response. The better you feel, the better you feel, right? I mean, it's true. It goes both ways. And so I did everything I knew what to do, like all of the things I had learned, all the tools that I had acquired over the last few years of coming from that place of 2007 2016 when I wanted to die, to standing in front of stages of hundreds and hundreds of people sharing my story and providing opportunity and showing and demonstrating hope, to now here I am again. Like, my body, I went from January of 23, I went from 281 pounds, which is pretty much where I hang out, 275 to 280, to 326 pounds by December 1st of 23. I couldn't get my autoimmune issue under control. I had to take prednisone as a medication for it, which increased my brain fatigue and brain fog. But the problem was that by January of 23, I didn't feel sharp anymore. Like, I had short-term memory loss was really bad. I can't remember names to save my life. I couldn't see clarity what was going to happen next. I was tired all the time. And then I just got pissed off and frustrated because everything pissed me off and everything frustrated me. And that's not who I am. And so it kept compiling to the point where my body was so out of alignment because of my brain. My brain perceived my body and space wrong. So all my weight was in my heels and I had a 22-degree tilt to my head. So when I sat and talked to you, this was normal. Like, my head position in this position, my brain believed that this was normal. And so there was this huge amount of neurological compensation happening all the time for all the negative physiological responses that were happening because of a degradation of my brain, because my brain didn't work right.
Yeah.
And come to December, by the time it was time for me to, in early November, I reached out to an organization I worked with down in Texas called the Texas Valor Project. And they work with another organization called Defenders of Freedom. And they work with another organization called Coast to Coast. And all three of these nonprofits work with each other in unison to put people through a traumatic brain injury clinic in Dallas, Texas. And so when I went, and so in early November, I reached out to a lady named Donna Cranston, who's absolutely spectacular. Donna is the founder, and she runs Defenders of Freedom. And I called her. I said, Donna, I need help. Like, I need to go. And I spoke at the Defenders of Freedom event in September. And at the Texas Valor Project event in September of last year. And I was, physically, you could see the difference. I'd gained 60 pounds of weight. My face was bloated and round. My body was bloated and fat and distended all the time. I had a hard time walking. My hips were Josh, it was so bad, man. So I called Donna and I said, I could use some help. I don't really know what to do anymore. And so they got me in for December, and it was 2 weeks just before Christmas. And I showed up on day one at 326 pounds with no mobility. I couldn't walk, couldn't function. I was sleeping on average roughly 3.5 hours a night on average. And it had been that way for 8 months.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you how your sleep was.
It was horrible.
Because that plays such a factor into everything.
My ferritin levels and hematocrit levels, which is, for those of you who don't know, that's the byproduct of iron in the blood. And so my ferritin levels and hematocrit levels were like 4x what they were supposed to be. I had too much blood. My body wasn't processing things properly because my brain wasn't working properly. And so on day one, I showed up, couldn't walk, couldn't sleep, wheezing, like mouth breathing like a son of a gun, man, just straight up gorilla in that. And by the 10th day, I went from 326, I was down to 311, 315 by the 10th day, pulling 485 pounds like I hadn't ever skipped a day in the gym on a deadlift, like easy, just standing it up. To, by the beginning of January, I was down to 300 pounds even from 326 on December 1st over a 30-day period. And I didn't have headaches anymore. I've lived with headaches since I was 27, dude. And here I am, like, I didn't know it was possible to feel this good.
So what were they doing in that time frame to help you obviously lose the weight, but what were the exercises, or what was the technology that they were helping you with?
It's all science fiction, man. It really is. Like, so there's three principal systems that make up functional neurological operations: your ocular system, your vestibular system, which is your inner ear, and then what's called proprioception. Proprioception is how your brain perceives joint function and spatial awareness, right? It's not kinesthetic awareness. Kinesthetic awareness is total body. Proprioception is specifically brain interaction with joint and joint awareness in space. And so they work on these 3 specific systems, and they identify a disconnect in these systems. And part of that is, one is sort of, how do your eyes work and function? Do you have the ability to focus? What's your attention span look like? Do you have short attention or long attention, and where is that at? Or what's called simple attention. Is there a simple attention problem? They look at your center of gravity. Your brain perceives its center of gravity and how you stand. That's how you maintain balance. And so they look at where your center of gravity is inside of that space. They also look at your total blood work. We pulled 7 or 8 vials of blood before I went to this clinic for us to identify what blood work really looked like. And so what they did is they started with day 1 intake. Day 2, they pulled roughly 1.5 liters of blood out of my body on day 2. And then they did what's called TMS, which is a transcranial magnetic stimulation. And what this device does is they take this device and they put it on the rear portion of the flank portion of your frontal lobe. And they beam electromagnetic pulses at specific frequencies into your brain to energize synaptic pathways and help build interconnecting tissue from the left side to the right side of the brain, specifically targeting the brain stem. So they did that twice a day. So day 1 intake, day 2, they pulled 1.5 liters of blood out of me. They did transcranial magnetic stimulation. They put me on a vibrating plate. So I just stood on a vibrating plate. That's all it was like. That's all I did. And then they did electrostimulation to my feet at specific frequencies. And then they gave me an IV infusion called NAD. I'm sure you've heard about NAD.
Yeah, I've had some.
Everybody's talking about it. You've had some?
Yeah. Oh. It makes you feel super weird when you're having it.
Taking it.
But there's when the IV's in and they got to adjust how fast or slow they input it, because it can make you queasy and stomach achy and feel really weird. But as soon as it's done, you feel like $1 million.
Feel like Superman. I've created a new challenge for myself. I do NAD twice a month. And so right now I'm doing, sometimes it's 300 milligrams, sometimes it's 500 milligrams twice a month. And my challenge now is, how fast can I get through it? So I did NAD yesterday. And I have a new record for me personally. It's 500 milligrams of NAD and 500 milliliters of an IV bag, run in 12 minutes and 40 seconds.
Holy shit.
Just on and go, baby. Let's go.
full flanks.
So that was day 1 or day 2. And that night I was so exhausted from eye exercises and from all the work that we had done, because it's not, you're not going in and you're not working out hard. You're not in the gym crushing yourself. Everything they're doing is demanding a different function of your brain to activate and work better. And so you're literally breaking old patterns and teaching the brain how it's supposed to actually function again. It's exhausting. And so I got done that day. This was a Tuesday night. I laid down to go to bed. I took a nap from 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock. And then I woke up and ate meat, which was spectacular because that's the new nutrition plan, right? It's basically the carnivore diet. Then I went to bed at 7:30 and I slept until 7 o'clock the next morning. And I woke up, I sat up, I stood up, and I walked to the sink. And when I got to the sink, I stopped and looked back at the bed and was like, nothing hurts. Like, I didn't have to press myself out of bed like I'm a 90-year-old invalid. I didn't have to like hobble or wobble to the bathroom to be able to use the bathroom. Nothing hurt. Like, I slept the whole night. It was spectacular. That was day 2. And then to day 3.
So day 2, day 3, you wake up, no pain. Mm-hmm. And I think I even saw on, I think you were posting, what was it called? The cranial stuff they put on your frontal lobes. I think you posted a little bit of that.
Yeah. And you sit in this chair, dude, and they take this thing and they put it on the side of your head, and it's like, tick, 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 and you can feel it's electromagnetic stimulation. It's electromagnetic pulses. So you can feel it activating and stimulating your scalp. But you can also feel it like in your head. It's crazy. Oh,
that's interesting. All right. Yeah. So how long was the program, if you will?
10 days.
10 days.
So it was 10 business days. It was 2 weeks. You show up on a Monday, you do your in processing, you're there for the whole first week. And then Saturday and Sunday, a lot of guys are coming in from out of town. So there's a guy that had gone through it. He's a former Delta Force operator. He's a phenomenal man, like a really, really good dude. He was so moved by his experience and he wanted to be able to be a part of this that he decided to go back to school to get his doctorate in order to be a functional neurological therapist. And he bought a house across the street from the clinic so that he could house dudes going to the treatment program. And when he was done, he literally can walk to the treatment, the facility. And then when guys come back to the house, he can facilitate conversations with these guys and help build a tribe with them. I mean, really, like, the people that are involved in this are just phenomenal, man.
And then how long is there a progression afterwards that you're still in touch with them, work to be done beyond the NAD that you told us about?
Yeah, absolutely. So I still do daily eye exercises. I still do daily balance exercises, specifically to make certain that my brain's still functioning and operating. And then when you first get out, you have a call with them every month. And then you have a call with them every quarter. And so the first 90 days, it's every month you have a follow-up with them and you do a follow-up to talk about where you're at, what you're doing, how you're feeling. They'll do exercise evaluations. So they're watching your eyes and how your eyes move and function to make certain that you still have good, steady eye pattern and movement rhythm. And you have bilateral. So you don't want one eye to work and one eye not to work. So you want bilateral functionality with your eyes. So they do all of that, man. They do all the follow-up. And here's the best part. If you go through treatment at the program, when you get out on the backside, if you need to go back in for a touch-up or a checkup and just to double check things, like, all you got to do is just call them, be like, hey, man, I'd like to come in town and just do a follow-up. Is there space? And they will put you back into it. And if you need like a couple of days of getting taken care of, they'll square you away.
Oh, that's great. What's fascinating to me is not only did you get quote unquote healed in this instance, you've developed a deep understanding of how the brain works. And I know you like understanding how things work, but it's fascinating to me. So like now you've been blessed with this divine gift of seeing the beauty in life and the world beyond, in 2016 where you almost took your life, and now getting through this program to fix your own brain essentially. Mm-hmm. It's like, how do you see spreading the word, spreading the grace of this gift within your community now?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that. I actually have a flight after this call where I'm flying to Colorado to speak at a veterans nonprofit to tell this story. And I'm speaking at 3 or 4 veteran nonprofits this year, but I'm also speaking at, currently I'm slotted to MC 4 different for-profit business conferences this year. And so there's a really great opportunity to spread the message to the veteran community to help them understand that, hey man, there's hope. Like, you don't have to live your life this way. This is not how it has to be. Post-traumatic stress is not a permanent condition. Really, it should be called post-traumatic experience response, because in all reality, you had a traumatic experience. That traumatic experience generated a psychological and neurological and physiological response. That response is a thing that's become a new condition, which we can condition away. You can't get rid of the memory. The memory is always going to be there, but you don't have to have the same physiological response and psychological response to those memories. They don't have to do the same thing. But we've been conditioned at this point to believe that if you've been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress, you're forever a victim. And now we're celebrating this victim mentality rather than celebrating those individuals who no longer accept being a victim. And so that's, the big push now, Josh, is, man, how many interviews can I do? How many conversations can I have? How many opportunities can I shake somebody's hand and say, hey, just so you know, all the bullshit they're feeding you is not true. You don't have to live this way. It doesn't have to be this way. It can change if you're willing to do the work for it to change. But the other side is true too, man. If you just want to sit on the couch and be comfortable, then you'll live by the mantra, which is comfort is death. But I've tattooed this thing 4 times, bro, and it won't take. Like, comfort will not actually hold on.
You use your hands too much, that means.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So when you say they, in that instance, that you don't have to live the way they tell you, who are you referencing?
Oh, Well, it's the big they, Josh. It's all the they that promote a victim mentality. It's all the they that promote that you're broken and you're dysfunctional. So everybody from the VA health clinic, the bureaucracy that has defined this, modern leftist and modern political societal climates, which say if you're a victim, always hold on to your victim ideology because we're going to celebrate that victimhood. Let's identify you and let's celebrate you and your victimness. It's all of them. It's literally every single medical professional, every single psychologist and therapist, every single doctor that would rather just treat the symptom than identifying the root cause of the problem and addressing the root cause of the problem. So I'm going to give you a medication for you to go to sleep, and then I'm going to medicate your anxiety with another medication, which causes a sleep problem. So then I'm going to add medication so that you can go to sleep. But then I'm giving you an increase in blood pressure because both of those medications have contradictions. So I'm going to give you a blood pressure medication because that's going to help with your blood pressure. Oh, and all three of those medications definitively impact your ability to produce testosterone. So now I'm not going to give you TRT because you fall inside the window that we say is acceptable based on the statistical probability of modern society, which is a low testosterone producing male populace now more than anything. So even though you can't sleep and even though you hurt, and even though you can't function, I'm gonna give you 37 pieces of medication, but I'm never actually going to address the real problem. But in the process of doing this, I'm going to go over here to this other person who has gender dysphoria, and I'm going to celebrate them and give them all the hormone replacement therapy that they need in order to be whatever they're not. But I'm not going to take care of you, even though this is something you actually are required to have. And so they are the ones, Josh, those. And I want to say so bad right now because it's those they're the ones.
I knew which day you were talking about. I wanted everyone else to hear it. And man, yeah, it's crazy because I'm glad you went there on the TRT side and furthermore into the gender dysphoria side because, yeah, they're willing to create lifelong customers to mutilate our own children and put them on hormone blockers or hormone accelerators for the rest of their lives because they're trying to act out of biology, out of nature. Into something that's, basically a mental condition. On the flip side, testosterone in men affects everything.
Everything. But God forbid, Josh, hey man, look, between 300 and 1,000 is the number, right? So you're coming in at 301.
It's 250 to 750 is the number.
Is that what they moved it to?
I believe so. And you might be right as well. Then the chart that I get, because I get mine tested with my blood test regularly, because I'm on TRT and I'll be very public about that. Yeah, I look good with my muscles. And that part of that is because TRT. So if you're over 35 years old, you should have your damn testosterone checked and probably be on TRT as well. So
that's exactly right.
The chart that it showed me is like 250 to 750. And if you're in that range, just so everyone knows, whether it's 300 to 1,000 or 250 to 750, doesn't matter. Yep. If you're in that range, your doctor, your medical physician, your general physician that you go and see will not issue, even if you're at 251.
Yep.
You have to fall below 250 on your blood work for them to even consider it. That being said, here is my misconception, because I bet a lot of other men have this. Is when I first got my blood work done, this was actually coincidentally 2016, was the first time. I was 36 years old and I got my blood work done and it showed I was at like 220 something. So I would have fallen in the numbers where my general physician would have done it, but I did it at a medical facility that offers personal training. One of my good friends owns it, Nestor, and he's an emergency room physician that started this business. And he's explained to me, I was like, I think we just found out we were pregnant with our fourth child. And I'm like, Doc, my sex drive's fine. Like that was my response to him telling me I had low T. And he's like, yeah, that's how they get you. I'm like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
He goes, well, if you tell the male populace that testosterone affects energy, we'll just supplement with energy drinks or ephedra or whatever it may be. That's just what we'll do as men. We'll just go do that. Yep. However, if you tell men that it affects their sex drive, they're like, well, I don't want my sex drive with. So So then you go and seek help. So that's how they get you to actually think about it, because testosterone drives energy. It drives your whole system, your brain, your brain function, as you mentioned. It drives everything. So bottom line is, you got to think about it like this, is like your body is a Lamborghini, or whatever your fanciest car is, Bugatti, whatever car you want. Like that's how you are made to be from God. And however, your performance from your endocrine system, whether it was because of drugs or because of your military experience, or in my experience, was probably more football related, the testosterone or whatever happened in my last, 20 years, it just got to a level where it wasn't productive, to the point where, like, if you could operate at so basically I'm driving around a Corolla, nothing wrong with Toyota Corolla, but like if I could drive around a Bugatti, why not do that? So get on TRT and you get to that optimal performance, to the point where you can move from where I was 220 to now I'm averaging about 700.
It's a big deal. And then I just had this conversation with my dad the other day. I was like, hey man, he's in his 60s. I was like, are you taking testosterone? And he goes, no, my doctor always tells me that I'm fine. I was like, who, your general practitioner? Yeah, well, he's full of how's your sleep? Well, it's not great. How's your body feel? It hurts. You aches, pains all the time? Yeah. Do you feel strong? Do you feel like a man? No, not normally. Okay, well, then you have a testosterone problem. More than likely, you have a testosterone problem, and you probably have an HPA interaction, which is an issue, which is the hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenal gland. There's an issue when we get into adrenal shock, and the HPA interaction, the hypothalamus and pituitary support the functionality of the adrenal gland. So if the adrenal gland diminishes its ability to function, which is one of the biggest issues we see with football players, first responders, military personnel, especially guys that are exposed to high levels of stress for an extended period of time, we get this diminished functionality from our adrenal gland, which demands the hypothalamus and pituitary to take a tick up in their operations, and eventually drains their ability to perform and function. And so we get this HPA interaction, which definitively impacts the overall ability of the endocrine gland system to function properly. So now we're just taking everything and we're one by one knocking the pillars out from underneath us. And then we get to the point where we're 36, 37, and we can't get an erection. We can't sleep. Our body hurts and aches all the time. And we're trying to figure out why we don't feel like men anymore. And it's because our general practitioners are telling us, no, you're good. You're at 251 or 255. Nano deciliters or whatever it is per is it nanomilligram?
Per blood unit.
What the measurement is anymore.
Something of that
whatever
nature.
It is. But therein lies the kicker, right? I'm on TRT as well. Also, I have TRT. My doctor has me on testosterone. I also do HCG, which is not HGH. Don't get crazy out there, people. But when you take testosterone replacement therapy and you increase synthesized testosterone in your system, whatever testosterone your testes naturally produce begins to diminish, and your testes can go into atrophy. And so HCG makes certain that doesn't happen. So you take HCG to ensure that you don't go into an atrophied state, and you increase overall testosterone production, which reduces visceral fat in the body, increases the sleep capability and sleep quality. You get more REM sleep when you do this. Now, imagine if you could do that and cut alcohol out of your diet for a minimum of 45 days and keep it out of your diet for maybe up to 90 days. I promise you guys, if you're listening to this, you don't have to live the way you're living.
Yes.
You don't. It doesn't have to be mediocrity. Like, you don't have to be okay just getting by. There are options, and it costs a little money, but I promise you, if you reinvest that money you spend every night on a 12-pack or every week on a bottle of bourbon, that's the money that would be required in order for you to find true health and wellness.
Yes. 100%. Preach. Oh, man. And I'll even say this. It's not even just us former football players or us former military or first responders that had to produce testosterone at a really high level that have low testosterone. If you're overweight, you have low testosterone, almost guaranteed. Mm-hmm. If you, even if you've just eaten processed foods throughout your life, you probably have low T, because the chemicals they're pumping in our foods, these forever chemicals, these pesticides in our fruits and vegetables, if you're not eating purely organic, close to home as possible, or growing your own produce and butchering your own meat, it is highly likely that your testosterone or your hormones are f***ed up because of the processed nature of our foods. And, and look, guys, I've talked about this on the show before, but it bears repeating as often as possible. Our FDA is corrupt as shit. Like if you trust the FDA, I got to ask you if you're nuts, because the food, like over 30 countries, industrialized countries, by the way, ban most of the foods that are in our countries. And if you are you just got to look at like Heinz ketchup is different, is more basic recipe in Europe than it is here. Potato Lay's, different recipe over there than it is here, because they sell a healthier product over there because those countries ban the forever chemicals, ban those other shit that are affecting our hormones, specifically our testosterone in men. And then when you think about that even further, it's like, why would they do that?
Well, Josh, think about this too, man. The fertility rate in the United States has gone down in general in women. So you have female fertility rate and male fertility rate being diminished because you have a lower amount, like especially in women, you have lower egg quality. And egg quality, you have to have good, healthy egg health in women and good sperm health in men in order to have good reproductive cycles. But the problem is what you're talking about, this chemical component that we're having in our food. I mean, look, man, when I went to TBI treatment, the very first thing they did was they said, this is the diet you're going to be on while you're here. There will be no alcohol, nothing that could induce inflammation. Their number one target was to reduce as much inflammation in the system as possible, as early on as possible. I went from 326 pounds to 315 pounds because I reduced inflammation. I mean, it was a reduction in overall bloat and water retention in the system because I changed everything that I did. I cut the medication I was taking. I cut it cold off. No more medication, like 100% zero, cutting it off. And it had to happen. No alcohol, no processed foods, locally grown organic grass-fed beef. And if I had a vegetable, it was specific to my blood type. The blood type diet is what they use. It's really actually quite good. Eat right for your type. Yeah. If you haven't heard about it, it's good. But you're 100% on the money. And if it's that small change in a 10-day to 12-day period can create that much of an impact, where I was able to go back home after this treatment for Christmas, walk in the door and toss my daughter over my head and chase her over and over and over again inside of this space and crawl on the floor and play bear and dinosaur with her in 14 days. Just those small adjustments made such a huge impact. Could you imagine if people would quit playing with their lives and quit listening to all the that comes out from the mainstream sources of this is what you're supposed to eat and this is how you're supposed to live, and actually understood that you could change? Could you imagine the difference our society would be in right now? We wouldn't have the obesity rate that we have. We wouldn't have the number one cause of death being heart disease in the United States. We wouldn't have significant amounts of mental disorders and mental disabilities because of horrible chemical imbalances that are happening in the system. This transgender gender dysphoria movement that we have seen over the last 6 to 8 years is because we have an entire generation of people that have been born and bred and fed horrible foods for such an extended period of time that it is definitively messing with the chemical balances in their system. We have people that are dying from depression because they can't seem to get themselves out of these dark holes, and they keep feeding the chemicals into their system that feed the depression.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a simple change.
And that inflammation, you're spot on. Inflammation causes almost all disease, from heart disease to cancer, to gout, to any ulcerative colitis. Inflammation can be traced to almost every disease, chronic or acute, that you can pinpoint. Almost every one. So them cutting out, they knew that the people that were helping you, reducing inflammation right away was going to have a significant impact, and then they could address everything else.
Exactly. And that's the reason why, right? They're like, hey, man, we know that you're having all these problems, but your body is in a state of inflammation and it's constantly on edge. It's constantly compensating for all the disconnects and all the deficiencies and all this, we'll just call it the liability of inflammation. And as soon as they're able to start turning that down, they can really focus on the problem. Hey, you know what? Your body perceives your center of gravity. If this is your center of gravity where it's supposed to be, this is what your body perceives your center of gravity to be, right? Which is your head is supposed to be, dude, I'm like, when I tell you a 22 degree tilt to my head to the right, it was literally a 22 degree tilt in my head to the right. And that was normal. It wasn't straight up and down. My eyes did not function in bilateral effort. Like one eye would function one way and one eye would function the other way. One eye would focus a specific way and the other eye would focus differently. And it's not because I have astigmatism or I need glasses. It's because my brain couldn't process the data.
That is crazy. So we're wrapping up on time here. So two last questions. What's a way that the Spartan community could best serve or support our veterans as it pertains to brain health?
Man, that's a good question. I would say the first thing is that if you have the time and the opportunity, look up the task force, look up Texas Valor Project, look up the Defenders of Freedom, look up Coast to Coast, and then look up the Resiliency Brain Health Clinic in Dallas, Texas. They are performing miracles, like straight up miracles. Like they are doing God's work at the highest level. It's absolutely spectacular. That's one way. Another great way to support the veteran populace, especially when it comes to brain health, emotional health, and physical awareness, is like, how about you as the individual who may be listening to this, you make a change. You change how you live your life and provide that as a demonstration to what's possible. So that when you go and say, hey, I support you and I want to help you and I believe in you and thank you for your service. And also, this is the I did to change my life. Can I show you how this works? I know that we're tight on time, but I got to just tell you this, man. I had a really good buddy of mine back in 2018. He asked me why I loved doing what I was doing at the time, training law enforcement. And I said, because I give an opportunity for these guys to learn a new tactic and maybe make it home safe to their family. And it's also an opportunity to talk about perspective and mentality, a warrior's mentality, not just a peacekeeper's mentality, but a warrior's mentality. And he said, Adam, do you live by at least 95% of the words that you speak to these men? And I went, I need to think about that for a second. And he said, well, let me just ask this question. If you don't live by at least 95% of those words, does that make you a manipulator or a motivator? And I thought, oh, I really need to consider this. Manipulation, even with good intention, is still manipulation because it's you speaking words you're not willing to live within integrity of yourself. So you're willing to say, go do this, but you're not willing to do this. Motivator is an individual who's lived the life, who lives the life, who continues to seek betterment in self and is willing to share the perspective of what true possibility looks like because they've proven it. That is a motivator. The manipulator is the one that says, I can see your gaps. This is how you fix them, but is unwilling to look at their own gaps to take action to fix those gaps. So if you're in the Spartan community and you're listening to this, don't be a manipulator. Take action, change your life, demonstrate what real possibility looks like by living it, and then show up and provide that background support and service support to those who are in the struggle of trying to change their own lives.
Dude, that's so good. Manipulation, even with good intention, is still manipulation.
Exactly.
Yeah, man. A lot of people need to hear that, especially nowadays in the social media world is full of so last question, then we'll get out of here. And I typically ask, because you got asked this before, what's an unpopular belief that you hold that most others would disagree with? But I'm going to switch this for Brain Health Awareness Month. What is a commonly held misconception about suicide that you wish could be permanently dispelled?
Well, I think that there's a commonly held belief about suicide with those who are considering suicide that it's the best answer. And I also think that there's a commonly held belief with those who have experienced suicide from the aspect of losing someone that the person was a coward. Mm-hmm. And I would say that both of those thought processes are not true. I will say that that's a cowardly way to go, but I don't think that the individual was a coward for going. And to the person who might be considering it, it's not the answer because it doesn't fix anything. It actually just causes more problems. If this story that the world is better, the common misbelief across the board, and it doesn't matter if you're suicidal or not, is that the world would be better off without me. That belief has to go away because we have a duty to not just exist in this life, but to live and truly experience this life. We have a duty to live the best aspect of ourselves at every chance we can get. And we have a duty to demonstrate that possibility to other people, regardless of whether they choose to change or not. We have a duty to ourselves and our families. And the belief and misconception that the world would be better off without me is utter bullshit. Because imagine the gap that would be left if you weren't here. The world's not better off without your perception and observation. Your family's not better off with you not being here. You're the people that you smile at and shake hands with. In that one moment, you've created impact that you don't even realize that you've created.
Yes, so good. Absolutely. And as a survivor with my father-in-law having taken his own life, I've said this often, bears repeating, it transfers the pain to those you love.
And it's not one-fold, it's like tenfold.
Yes. And for the rest of our lives, we deal with that pain. Mm-hmm. So just keep that in mind. Man, Adam, thank you again for your service to our country. Thank you for sharing your vulnerable story today, because I know that a lot got out of it. And obviously, what I love about the conversation is not just how much that experience helped you, but how much you understand it to be able to explain it to everyone and how that might be able to help them. I love that you got into it so intellectually that you were not only were like, yeah, hey, fix me, but you're like, I want to understand this so I can actually communicate it. And you articulate it so well. So kudos to you. Where can people follow you if they're not currently?
Man, if you guys have the opportunity, go to savage-links, links.com. That's my own personal link tree. You can find aspects of my entire life there. You can follow me at the Savage Freedoms Podcast. You can find me at therealadamsmith.com. It is therealadamsmith.com. You can also find me at Savage Freedoms Defense or Savage Freedoms on Instagram and on Facebook. And if you have a question, if you want to reach directly out, you can send me an email directly to info@savagefreedoms.com, and freedoms is plural because we like all of them.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, I'm a little bit lucky. My SEO is good because there's no other Josh Kosnicks that I know of. Adam Smith is a decently popular name.
Yeah, you Google Adam Smith and the first one comes up as a Democratic senator. I'm like, man, I'm not that guy.
For sure not that guy after confessing some of the things today. All right, Spartan audience, you know what to do. Share this show. It's going to have a huge impact. And if you know a veteran, especially one that's struggling, get this in their hands. Get this in their ears. There is hope, as Adam said. Remember, the good and great are the enemies of possible. Lead like a Spartan today.